Welcome back to the channel. If you missed the first episode, you'll have seen me trying plastering for the first time on the wall behind me and a ceiling. This is part 2 of the plastering the kitchen series. This is my home renovation and we're about to get into some more plastering. The next wall I'm about to plaster is this one right here. This time I have no one here to help me. It's just me by myself. It's a warm day. I'm not a plasterer, so this plaster is going to go off quick and I need to be ready to go. So I need to be fully prepared, so when that mix is made, I can just start getting it straight on the wall. Let's get to it.
The previous 2 days of plastering this kitchen have definitely done a lot for my confidence, but not a lot for my skill. Today's plastering is going to be done by myself, no one to help with the mixes and no one to pass me a hawk, which means it's going to be more tiring and slower, which combined with a warm day and a mix that hasn't got enough water in it can cause disaster. So for me to make it to the end of the wall without the plaster going off, I had to work really quick, which did make a lot of mess.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. That first coat on the wall was stressful. I barely got any plaster left in the bucket. I thought I was going to run out before I finished. And because I was having to move so quick, there are some areas that are a little bit low, a bit lower than I'd like them to be. And there's some quite big lines and hollows. So when I come to make the next mix, I need to make sure I make a little bit more mix and I make it a little bit wetter because I just know it's going to go off really quick. So second coat time. I've just made the mix. I'm going to get on with it really quick because of the warm weather. It's drying out super quick. I'm going to rely on the speed skim a bit here. So I'm going to get it on the wall nice and quick, nice and thick, go over it with the speed skim straight away, and then hopefully end up with a nice flat wall, and then I can get some of the lines out afterwards. Let's see how it turns out. Mix is a touch wetter than before, but not by a lot. Just made a rookie mistake. My trowel was soaking wet when I wanted to take that first load of mix off. So then the plaster just wouldn't stick to the trowel, which is difficult. This is already a lot messier than the other coat. Started off badly, but I'm not going to panic. That's the worst thing you can do. Worst thing you can do is start panicking. So let's get some of this off the trowel. Let's get these sides filled in a little bit. Oh, this is really not going very well, is it? I'm going to give that a quick clean.
I know I just said not to panic, but I was clearly panicking. It was a hot day. I was worried about the mix going off, so I was trying to work quicker than my ability would allow. And not only that, I'd made such a poor job of the first coat, it really wasn't level. I had to work extra hard with the second coat to get it nice and flat. So for reference, I used the stainless steel Finitex trowel to apply the first coat. That's got a 0.65mm blade, which definitely feels a bit more firm than the Superflex 3, which is the rose gold trowel that I used for this second coat, which is also 14-inch stainless steel trowel, but the blade is 0.5mm thick, which does give it a little bit more flexibility.
Being totally honest, I just felt like that was the hardest wall I've ever done, even harder than the really big tall wall just behind where the camera is. It felt like the plaster was going off really quick. I felt like I made loads of mistakes, like I was getting the trowel stuck, and it just did not go right. And with the awkward window and door and plug socket, it just wasn't going on easy. Luckily the X skim, I feel, has saved me a lot here because it's helped me get, as soon as I put that second coat on, I put that second coat on nice and thick, but then I went over it with the X skim and literally just took off like a mil, and now I've got a really flat wall. There are some lines left. I'm letting it dry out just a little bit, and then I'm going to hit it with the trowel. I'm trying to get some, and I'm just going to try and get it nice and smooth now and just get rid of some of those lines. I think it will turn out okay, but for me, having done the other walls, felt like I was building up some confidence about the fact I could do this and I could just slowly improve, where I feel like the second day I did the plastering, I feel like I'd taken a step forward, but today I feel like I've taken a step back, so I feel like I'm almost back where I was before. So that can be hard sometimes mentally, just kind of getting into it. I suppose I've had a few days off, my head's not in it, who knows. But anyway, I need to wait for this to dry. Whilst this is drying, I'm going to be cleaning off all the tools. I'm going to keep some of the mix in the bucket because I'm going to be able to use that mix to fill in any little holes if there are any, and there probably are. So then I can get to work on just basically filling in any holes, smoothing it all off and making it perfect. So I don't know how easy it is to see on the camera, but there's some holes in the plaster, there, and there. And what that is, it's just areas that I've missed with the second coat. So I've got the trowel that I used for the second coat and taken some of the plaster that I used from the second coat, which is now going off very quickly. It's still malleable. It's quite hard, it's a bit sticky, but it's just malleable enough to put some into those holes, just like that. So at first it doesn't look too good. Just find your holes, push them in, take away any excess, like that. There you go. So now you can see that it's not perfect. The surface is a bit messy where I've put that plaster in. So I'm just going to get my wet brush and just take off any of the excess from my trowel, like that. So I've got no excess plaster on there, and it's now also a little bit wet. And I'll be able to just smooth those areas off with that wet edge of the trowel, like that. And then I'm just going to get the whole trowel wet. If I can, splatter the wall a little bit and just go over the whole thing, and there you have it. All those holes are gone. Right. So now I believe that the plaster's gone off enough for me to brush in the edges. Day 4 of plastering the kitchen, and day 3 went really well. It's the following day, so it's not fully dried out yet, but I've decided to tackle this side of the room because it's just another part that needs doing. I've been busy all this morning. It's about 2 p.m. in the afternoon at the time of filming this, so I just thought, in a renovation, you've just kind of got to make the most of the time that you have got, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to start plastering this wall right here, and if I have any mix left over, so if I've mixed just a bit too much in the bucket, then I'm going to start doing some of the reveals around the window as well. I don't want to tackle too much all at once because it is still very warm, and I know how fast this plaster goes off, especially after my last attempt. So I'm going to get on with it. First coat first. I've got all my stuff out, so we can just start cracking on. Wish me luck. Let's get some of this plaster in. Honestly, let's see what we can do this time. Oh, oh, anyone think I was dead clumsy? second coat. Let's do it. So that application was way better than the others, or that's what I think so anyway. It's not necessarily that the finished outcome is better, it's more that I didn't drop as much plaster on the floor, and it just feels like when you're doing that, you just feel a little bit more professional, you know, so it's not slapping all over the place, and that's exactly where I got to today. I did have a bit of mix left over after doing the first coat on that piece there, so I decided to cross the room and do the reveals on the window. It's a bit of a last minute thing, kind of pushed myself out of my comfort zone because it's something unplanned, it's a little bit of extra work, it's more time using mix that's going off, but it's worked out perfectly. So I got that done, moved back over there, second coat, moved back to the reveals, second coat on that as well. Just made sure I was going really nice and quick. I skimmed this wall. I didn't bother with the reveals, but I skimmed this wall to make sure it was nice and flat. To be honest, I'm not sure that it was actually necessary for me to skim this wall. It was flat enough with the trowel, which is another thing that's going to help me build my confidence. I felt like it was almost perfect with just the trowel and no skim. So I've just waited for it to dry off. I didn't show it on the footage, but I've just basically done like a third trowel to get all the lines out, so it's now really nice and smooth. I'm going to wait for it to go hard, and I'm just going to do one final run with the trowel just to get any fine lines out. But I do think that this has been the best application, and with what I know now and how I feel about plastering, I feel like I'm almost ready to tackle the big ceiling and the ceiling in the extension. So those are definitely harder projects. And until then, day 5, and the plastering so far has been going really well. Confidence is building. I feel like I'm getting better and better every single time I do this. So today I'm going to tackle 2 walls at once. I've made a big enough mix to do the wall behind me, which is where the living room door is, and the chimney breast. The chimney breast is one of the most visible parts of the room, and my whole plastering work will probably be judged by how well the chimney breast is done. So I'm hoping that by now I've got just enough experience to be able to make a good job of it. Right, this is the moment of truth. The fireplace, let's get this plastered. Just gonna start top left, work across at the top, and then do the bottom after, just like I've done with every wall so far. We're using a mix that's already going off, so we've got to be quick, basically. When you've got to be quick, it leads to
times of the essence.
pressure. Because I've decided to tackle 3 walls at once, this, what I first did, is already starting to go off. It's gone past that sticky stage, only marginally, but it has gone past it. So I need to get the second coat on really quick. Plaster's going off. Not an ideal situation. Oh, can't believe it. This is the worst wall we've done. This channel is all about showing the wins, but also showing the fails. I think I got a bit brave when I decided to do 3 walls at the same time. And it's a warm day, the plaster was going off really quick. And the last wall to do is this one behind me here. It's the chimney breast, which happens to be probably the most seen wall in the kitchen. And I really shouldn't have tried to do 3 walls at once. As a result, I've now got a bit of a wave in the plaster and it's not looking good. I've tried to go over it a few times with a trowel. I've tried to get those wavy lines out, but what I think it is, it's where one plaster board joins the other and there's some tape, scrim tape down that joint, and I feel like I put just too much plaster in that area. And because the plaster was going off at the time, it was very sticky and it's just kind of like stuck into a ridge. I need to wait till it fully dries to see the full impact, but we'll just have to see how that turns out. Worst case scenario, I have to go over it again and give it another skim. Not the end of the world, but I could definitely do without that. This is the time we're going to tackle this ceiling. Now, I've been doing a little bit of research on this behind the scenes because I've been a bit worried about it because it's really big and I did struggle with the smaller kitchen ceiling because it really is hard on your shoulders. But I think what happened last time is I was worried about making a mix that was too sloppy and it would slop everywhere. And because of that, it was very thick and it was very hard on the shoulders when I was trying to get it on the ceiling. This time, I'm going to put a bit more water in, make it a little bit more wet, and then when I go over the ceiling, it shouldn't be as hard on the shoulders. I can move a lot quicker and it won't be drying out as fast. So let's hope we can make a good job of it. I'm covered in plaster. So the second coat's gone on and I've just done the third trowel. So basically I've put the second coat on, got it nice and flat and smooth as I can with that trowel. It's a little bit more flexible trowel. And then I went straight over it with the speed skim before it had time to dry. That gave me a perfectly level ceiling, but I still needed to smooth it off. So I got back on the flexible trowel when it had dried just a little bit, just to get rid of those lines that the speed skim had left. Not only that, I'm kind of like pressing the plaster in, so it's kind of giving it a little bit of a polish, although I'm not trying to polish the surface because that's bad for painting. So you can see it behind me, but I'll just show you now and you'll be able to see exactly how the finish is after I've done that third trowel. It's smooth, but it's got that bit of a shine to it. There is 2 more phases after this because, as you can see, there are small bits of plaster left on the surface, and I need it to dry out a little bit more before I can touch it again. That's the point where I can go around with a brush and start flicking the water onto the surface of that dry plaster, and then once more go over it all with the flexible trowel to just basically get rid of any tiny imperfections. That's kind of moving the fat around, and then once that's dried, you can go over one more time with the trowel whilst it's dry and just get off any of the high spots. That kind of just basically sands away any of the high spots, giving you a real tough and flat surface. So I need to wait a little bit. I'm gonna have a cup of tea, and when it's dry, I'm gonna finish the rest off. This is about as good as it's ever gonna get, and I'm about to plaster the ceiling in my extension. I've waited so long to do this, and now it's time to do it. So wish me luck. I'm gonna get everything prepared and just get it on, and hopefully we can get a nice smooth finish. Let's go for it.
By this point in the project, I was feeling a bit more confident because now I've done 2 full ceilings, and this one isn't fully flat, it's on a pitch, it's a little bit easier to trowel, but I've got that beam in the way, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to get to that top part. And it was only when I was working on the top of the ceiling that I realised the warm air is definitely accumulating up there, which means the plaster is going off even quicker. So it put the pressure on to get that ceiling done quickly. I was lucky once again to have Reese with me, who was helping me do the mixes and helping me get some plaster onto the Hawk so I could continue doing this a lot quicker. If you are going to attempt this sort of project for the first time and it's a big area just like this one, I would definitely recommend getting a second person. That person doesn't have to be skilled, but if they can be there just for the labour, that's going to help a lot. I'm aiming for about 1mm worth of plaster on the surface per coat. So the first coat is 1mm and the second coat is 1mm. From the research that I've done, I do believe that the thickness of plaster per coat does depend on the substrate that you're plastering over. For me, I'm plastering over flat plasterboards, so I can afford to go really thin. I could probably do 1/2 mil if there was no scrim tape there, just to cover the board. All in all, the ceiling went really well. It did go a little bit slower than I'd expected, but that was due to the access into that top part of the ceiling. It did make things really difficult, and the overexposure coming from the skylight also made it difficult to see where was flat, where was smooth, and it just took a little bit longer.
Okay, I'm just going to come clean. Admittedly, I've made a little bit of a mistake, and that's with the beading that I've put on this beam here. So I should have stapled the beading on. I shouldn't have used plasterboard adhesive. It's not really a problem that I've used it. It's more that because of the thickness of the adhesive, it's meant that the bead has kind of sat away from the plasterboard, and now I've got a bit of a gap of about 5 mm in between each of the beads on this beam behind me. And what that means is I've got to fill that area with something like plasterboard bonding. I bought a small bag of it, I don't need loads. I've got to do one more process before I can even plaster this area, which is a little bit frustrating. I should have known better. I'm just going to get on with it and just do all of the areas that need filling in before I can start plastering. Mistakes happen. This is DIY, and that's just what you've got to expect. You've got to learn somehow.
Making this mistake was painful because not only did it mean another process, it meant drying time as well. So I had to apply this to the beam, and I had to make sure that it didn't come lower than the actual beads itself. And that's because I wanted to get this really nice and flat with the plaster from bead edge to bead edge. And if you've ever used this undercoat, it's very sticky and very gritty. Honestly, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to after posting this video is to see some comments from plasterers to see how well I did and what I can improve next time. So whilst I waited for that undercoat plaster to dry, I decided to plaster by myself the exterior wall of the house. And I say this is the exterior wall because originally, before the extension, this was the outside of the house. Nicole and I were debating whether we should keep this area exposed so you could see the brick and you could see the steel beam. But with us already having one really annoying steel beam that stretches from one side of the extension to the other and gets in the way of the skylight, we thought it'd be better to keep it a nice, clean aesthetic, get it plasterboarded and plastered.
Well, I stopped filming after the first coat because the mix was going off so quick. I just had to focus and I wasn't moving the camera around. It was just filming nothing for ages. So I just turned it off, got on with it, and now it's finished. So today I've been able to put the undercoat in on the underside of the beams. That's to fill in the gap that was left by the beads that I installed with adhesive rather than with pins. I've actually fully plastered that top bit of the wall now. That's first and second coat. There's one more trowel left to do on that, and then I've done this side of the beam as well. As you can see, it's dark. Again, first and second coat, one more trowel to do, and then the windowsill upper and the windowsill lower. That's had first and second. Needs one more trowel, and same with this on the upper, on the door as well. So they're all looking really good. Just a little bit more work left to do, but I'm losing the light, so it's not easy. So it feels like I've been at this for like 8 days now, which is crazy because a plasterer would have plastered this room in 2 days. But I made some big progress yesterday. I got the wall up here done, and now I need to do the other sides of the beams. As you can see, there's a beam behind me that needs doing right here, and the underneath of that beam needs doing. I've got the skylight here, all of the inside of there needs doing. Let's get to it. I'm doing all right at plastering, yeah.
I actually really struggled more than anywhere else in the room on this beam, although that's not obvious. Because I'd used that undercoat plaster, it was gritty and the grit was getting into the plaster. And on top of that, I hadn't filled it quite enough, which meant that the thickness of the plaster that I was putting onto that beam was probably about 3 mm, which just felt like way too much, and I could tell from the finish that it left. Surprisingly, getting a plastering brush just like this one that was sent to me by Refiner is actually super useful. At times you just need to be able to clean your trowel off or flick some water up the wall, and this brush is perfect for that because the bristles are just long enough, they're just loose enough, and then there's a little catch on the side that means you can hang it on the side of the bucket. And admittedly, the worst plastering job in the kitchen goes to the skylight because it was so hot because of the glass and the sun coming through that glass and warming up this area. It was almost impossible to get this on fast enough and then to level it off afterwards.
That's it. Every wall in the kitchen and beam is plastered. And the secret to plastering really is patience. You've got to take your time to learn the process and start to feel how the material mixes and goes on the wall. Yes, the environment changes things and the tools that you use also make a big difference. But if you're planning to go into plastering as a DIYer, then make sure you get yourself some good tools and spend a lot of time practicing. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.